You really think I'm going to hand over everything I've worked for? My savings? You want me to risk it all because you and your brother have a golden opportunity?" My voice was steady, but my heart was racing. I knew exactly what was happening, and this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. "My name is Mary Benson, and I'm 66 years old. I've been retired for a few years now, living alone in a quiet corner of Oakwood. I lost my husband when I was young, and for years, I raised our daughter, Emma, by myself. The work was hard shift after shift at the local factory, the kind of labor that left your muscles sore and your spirit drained. But I kept going. I had to. It was just me and Emma. And I made sure she had everything she needed. Over the years, my body may have broken down from the strain, but my resolve only grew stronger. I've always believed in taking care of myself, so when I finally retired, I didn't sit back and relax. I kept busy, doing odd jobs, cleaning houses, anything that kept me moving and kept the bills paid. By the time I was 60, I had managed to save $152,000, every penny earned through hard work, years of sacrifice, and careful budgeting. That money wasn't just numbers in an account to me. It was my security, my peace of mind, my shield against the unknowns of old age. I wasn't going to rely on anyone, especially not my daughter. She had her own life to live, and I wasn't about to become a burden on her. I had done everything I could to make sure I wouldn't have to lean on anyone else. 3 years ago, Emma married a man named Peter Andrews. They moved into a new home in a neighborhood called Maple Grove, not far from where I live. I watched as they settled in, trying to build a life together. Peter was charming, always with a smile, always saying the right things. He would show up at my house, bringing gifts, offering help. He'd clean my windows, change light bulbs, even fix a leaky faucet without me asking. He seemed to care too much sometimes, but I told myself that young people respecting their elders was a good thing. I wanted to believe that Emma had married well. I was happy for her, truly. But recently, something had started to feel off. Peter was dropping by more often than usual, always with that same smile. But now, I could see through it. His questions weren't just casual anymore. "Mary, is your pension enough to cover everything you used to work at that big factory?" "Right. I imagine you saved quite a bit." He'd ask about my investments, my finances, sounding like he was just making conversation, but I could tell it wasn't just curiosity. It was something else. It was as if he was running the numbers in his head, trying to estimate my worth. At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was just being polite. But as time went on, his comments started to weigh on me. They weren't just idle chatter anymore. He was probing. And when he started talking about business ideas, his and his brother Mark's, well, that's when I knew something wasn't right. They needed seed money, he said, to start their own company. I didn't need to hear any more. I had worked too hard to get here, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. So, I made sure to keep my cards close, protecting what was mine. As the weeks went by, I began to notice something even more troubling. Peter's visits weren't just random acts of kindness anymore. They were becoming more frequent, and his behavior seemed different. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, but then I couldn't ignore the growing sense of discomfort. The constant, cheery demeanor that had once seemed so genuine was now starting to feel forced. It wasn't just the frequent offers to help those had been going on for a while. It was the way his eyes would linger on me when he spoke, like he was waiting for me to say something specific, something he could use. And then came the questions. They were always casual, but there was an underlying tension beneath them. How's your pension? Mary, that factory you worked at for so many years, it must have paid off. Right. His voice always carried that warm, innocent tone. But I wasn't fooled. The way he asked about my savings, it wasn't curiosity. It was something deeper. It was as if he was assessing me, trying to figure out how much I had and how easily he could tap into it. I thought about it for a while, unsure of how to respond. I had never been one to talk about my finances, not even with Emma. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. It was just that, for me, money had always been a personal matter, something I worked hard for and protected. I had managed to save a decent amount over the years, and that money was my safety net. My plan for the future was simple: live comfortably, without being a burden to anyone, especially not my daughter. And for that, I needed to keep what I had safe. But Peter was persistent. He and his brother Mark had been talking about starting a business. He said, some kind of organic farm project that would be good for the community and low risk for investors. He'd talk about it almost every time he visited, as if to remind me that this golden opportunity was out there, just waiting for someone to take a chance. And the way he'd talk about needing money, just a little to get started. Mary, a small investment to help us take off made my stomach turn. I didn't want to be rude, but I knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just being helpful, offering to fix things around my house or bring me gifts. He was trying to soften me up, to lower my guard. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that all his kindness was just a facade. It wasn't about helping me. It was about getting his hands on my money. I wasn't one to make hasty decisions, but I couldn't ignore the way this was making me feel. I had worked too hard for too many years to let someone take advantage of me, especially not a man who had been in my life for only a few short years. So I started to deflect. I gave vague answers when he asked about my savings. Oh, I'm doing just fine, I'd say with a smile, even though I knew he wasn't buying it. My pension covers everything. I don't really have anything left for big investments these days. He'd nod, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. He wasn't fooled by my answers. He was just waiting for the right moment to push harder. It wasn't just Peter, though. Emma had started mentioning their project more often, too. At first, it was just casual talk, but then she started asking if I might be able to help out. Mom, I know it's a lot, but Peter and Mark really think this could work. They just need a little startup capital to get it off the ground, she'd say. Her voice was always soft, like she didn't want to pressure me. But I could hear the hope in her tone, the unspoken expectation that I would be the one to help. I loved Emma more than anything in this world, but I wasn't going to let her get swept up in something that didn't feel right. I could tell that she believed in Peter, that she trusted him, and maybe, just maybe, that's what hurt the most. She couldn't see what I saw: the manipulation, the pressure. Sweetheart, I said, taking her hand one evening as she sat across from me at the kitchen table. Starting a business isn't something you just dive into head first. It takes time, planning, and yes, some money. But you can't just rush into these things. I've worked my whole life to get to where I am, and I'm not willing to risk it all on something that might not work out. I could see the disappointment in her eyes, but I had to be firm. I loved her too much to let her make a mistake. If Peter really wants to start this business, he needs to do it the right way. Save up, build something with his own two hands. I can't be the one to fund it. Not now. Not ever. She didn't argue. She never did. But I could tell she wasn't happy with my answer. And just like that, The seed of doubt was planted in my mind. I had done everything I could to protect myself, to make sure I wouldn't become a burden to Emma. But now, I felt like I was losing her to Peter's influence, and that hurt more than I could put into words. The next weekend, Emma and Peter came over for dinner. I cooked their favorite meal, took extra care with every detail. I wanted it to feel like home, like we were still the family we had always been. But as the evening wore on, something felt off. Peter was more attentive than usual, too attentive. He kept refilling my glass, asking if I was comfortable, offering to clean up after the meal. It felt almost rehearsed, like he was trying too hard to prove that he was still the loving, helpful son-in-law. And then came the moment I had been dreading. After a few drinks, Peter's demeanor shifted. His tone became softer, smoother, almost coaxing. "Mary," he said, his voice a little slower now. "I've been thinking. You've worked your whole life. Right. You must have saved quite a bit over the years. You've got to have something set aside for retirement." I looked at him, studying his face. His smile was still there, but it was different now, colder. He was probing again, pushing me to reveal how much I had. "I've been thinking about that farm project," he continued. "If you just shared a little, you could help us get it off the ground. It's a sure thing. We just need a little seed money to make it work." I felt the tightness in my chest again, that familiar sensation of being cornered. But this time, I wasn't going to let it happen. I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let him get to me, not after everything I had worked for. So I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a practiced one. "Peter, I've told you before, I don't have a lot of extra money, just enough to get by, just enough for my bills and a little bit saved for emergencies. That's it. I'm not in a position to invest in anything, especially not something that's still in the planning stages." Peter's smile faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. "Of course. Mary, I understand. I just thought I'd ask." I knew better than to let him see how much that conversation had affected me. But deep down, I was more certain than ever Peter and Mark weren't interested in building a business. They were interested in taking what I had. The next few days passed in a blur. Peter and Mark stopped by less often, and when they did, it was more casual. The smiles were forced. The offers to help disappeared, but I knew this wasn't over. They were just regrouping, waiting for the right moment to strike again, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them. I had worked too hard for too many years to let anyone take what was mine. This battle wasn't just about money. It was about respect, dignity, and the right to live out my years in peace. And I would do whatever it took to protect that. For a while, things seemed to settle back into a routine. Peter and Mark stopped dropping by as frequently. And when they did, it was always with some excuse. They'd been busy with the farm project or trying to work out the details with investors. I didn't buy it, but I let it slide. I had other things to worry about mainly, my own quiet life and keeping my savings safe. But just when I thought things had calmed down, Peter found a new way to get to me. It started with Emma. She began coming around more often, more than usual, always with a worried look on her face. She'd ask about how I was doing, if I needed anything, and the subtle pressure began again. I could tell she was conflicted, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her love for me. The questions she asked became harder to ignore, and the conversation always seemed to lead back to Peter's farm project. "Mom, I've been thinking," she'd say, her voice soft and hesitant. What if you could help Peter? He's really working hard, and this project, it could be a big thing. You know he's been under so much stress. I could see the concern in her eyes, and I knew exactly what was happening. Peter had turned on the charm again, planting seeds of doubt in Emma's mind. He was playing her, using her to break me down slowly. I wasn't stupid. I had raised Emma, and I knew her better than anyone. I knew that deep down. She wanted to believe in Peter, wanted to see the best in him. She was kind-hearted, and that made her an easy target. But I wasn't going to let him manipulate her like he had with me. I wasn't about to let him use my daughter as a pawn in his game. So, I sat her down one evening after dinner, when the weight of the conversation felt the heaviest. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I understand you want to help Peter, but this isn't the way. You have to see what he's doing. He's not just under stress. He's using you to get what he wants. You can't let him pressure you into giving him something he hasn't earned." Emma looked at me, her brow furrowed in confusion. She didn't understand. How could she? She had never seen the side of Peter that I had. She had never felt the tension in the air when he spoke about money, the way he would casually ask about my savings like it was no big deal. "Mom, I don't think he's trying to hurt you," she said quietly. "He just wants to build something for us, for our future." I shook my head, feeling the weight of years of experience bearing down on me. "Emma, it's not about what he wants or what he's trying to build. It's about respect. He's been using you, slowly and quietly, to get to me. You have to see that. A man who truly loves you, who truly respects you, wouldn't do that. He wouldn't pressure you to manipulate your own mother for money." Her eyes welled up, and for a moment, I could see the conflict tearing at her heart. She wanted to believe in her husband, and I didn't blame her for that. But I couldn't let her stay blind to the truth. "I'm not asking you to choose between me and him, sweetheart," I said, my voice softening. "I'm asking you to open your eyes. See him for who he really is. If he truly loved you, he wouldn't have turned you into an instrument for his schemes. And if he's willing to do that to you, what does that say about the way he sees you? And what does it say about the way he sees me?" For a long moment, Emma was silent. I could feel her wrestling with everything I had just said. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. "I know you're right. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe it." I reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I know, sweetheart, but you have to see it now. For your sake and for mine. I've worked too hard for too many years to let someone take what's mine, no matter who they are, and I won't let you be caught up in it either." She nodded slowly, her eyes still filled with tears. "I don't know what to do. Mom, I don't want to lose him, but I don't want to lose you either." "You don't have to lose anyone," I said softly, "but you have to stand up for yourself. You have to see through the lies and the manipulation. I'm not asking you to cut him out of your life, but I am asking you to recognize when he's trying to take advantage of you." After that conversation, things didn't immediately get better. In fact, they got worse. Peter started showing up less, and when he did, it was with an air of forced politeness, like he knew I had seen through his act. But I knew this wasn't over. He wouldn't give up that easily. He was too invested in getting what he wanted. One evening, Peter showed up unannounced, his face tight with tension. He wasn't smiling like he used to, and that made my skin crawl. "Mary," he said, his voice low. "We really need to talk about the money, about the investment. This is a big opportunity for us, and I really think you should help us out. We're just trying to make a future here." I could see the desperation in his eyes, the way he was clutching at his last hope. "Peter," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I've told you before. I'm not going to help you. Not like this. Not with my retirement savings." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression hardening. "You know, Mary," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "I don't think you understand how important this is. If you just helped us out a little, everything would change. You'd see. We could be family, really family, helping each other out." I stood up slowly, feeling the anger bubbling up in my chest. "No, Peter, you've crossed the line. This isn't about family. This is about you taking advantage of me, and I'm not going to let you do it. Not now, not ever." The silence between us was thick, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Peter's face twisted in frustration, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out, but he didn't. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "You'll regret this, Mary," he muttered under his breath. I looked him in the eye and said, "I've already made my decision. You're not going to get anything from me." The next few days were tense. Peter and Emma didn't come over, and I knew that they were both hurting. But I also knew that I had done the right thing. I had protected what was mine, and I had stood up for myself. And in the end, that was all I could do. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing. The tension between Peter, Emma, and me had started to settle, but I knew deep down that the worst wasn't over. Peter and his brother Mark had changed their approach, but I could see the same glint in their eyes. They were scheming, and they hadn't given up. It was just a matter of time before they tried again, but I wasn't about to let them catch me off guard. One morning, I woke up to a message from Emma. It was brief, but it chilled me to the bone. "Mom, Peter and Mark are coming by this afternoon. They want to talk about the farm project again." I read the message over and over, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was their way of pushing me. It wasn't just a friendly visit. It was a chance for them to try again, to worm their way into my life, to get what they wanted. I spent the rest of the morning pacing. I was preparing myself for whatever was coming next. I didn't want to be caught off guard. The last thing I wanted was to be blindsided by their charming smiles and well-rehearsed arguments. I had seen the signs before the subtle manipulations, the hints about needing money. They weren't subtle anymore, and neither was I. When they arrived, it was just as I had expected. They were all smiles at first, but I could see through them. Mark was talking about the farm project again, as if it were some kind of golden opportunity that no one could afford to miss. Peter played along, nodding, supporting everything Mark said. "It's really a once-in-a-lifetime chance." "Mary," Peter said, his tone just shy of pleading, "we're doing something good for the community, and it could really take off. We just need a little help to get it started." I could see the desperation in their eyes. It wasn't just a business pitch anymore. It was an emotional appeal. They were trying to guilt me into helping them, trying to make me feel like I was somehow responsible for their success. The worst part was that Emma was sitting there, too, her eyes flicking between me and Peter. She knew what was happening, but I could see that she didn't want to acknowledge it. She still wanted to believe in her husband, still wanted to think the best of him, and that broke my heart. I didn't say anything right away. I let them talk, let them weave their story. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how much they'd try to convince me. They talked about everything: the future, the potential, the good they could do. They even brought up how the farm could benefit the local economy, how it could bring jobs to the area. But I wasn't buying it. I knew what was really going on. This wasn't about helping anyone. This was about money. My money. Peter noticed the silence in the room, the lack of enthusiasm. He could feel the tension, and that's when he made his move. "Mary," he said, leaning forward in his chair, "we really need your help. This project could change everything for all of us. You've worked so hard your whole life. This is your chance to leave a legacy, to help build something that will last. Just think about it." I could feel my chest tightening. They were pulling every emotional trick in the book, but I wasn't going to let them manipulate me. I had worked too damn hard for everything I had, and I wasn't going to throw it away on a whim. Not for a dream they weren't even sure about. Not for a business that hadn't even started yet. "Peter," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I've told you before. I don't have that kind of money to throw around. I've worked my whole life to save what I have, and I'm not about to risk it on something that isn't guaranteed. You want to start a business, then do it the right way. Save up. Work for it. I'm not going to hand you my savings just because you think it's a good idea." I could see the disappointment in Peter's eyes, but there was something else there too. Frustration, anger. I knew he didn't like being told no, but it didn't matter. I wasn't going to change my mind. Emma looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Mom, we're just asking for a little help. Peter and Mark really believe in this. It's not just about the money. They believe in what they're doing. They believe it could work." I sighed and shook my head. "It's not about whether I believe in you or not, Emma. It's about trust. And right now, I don't trust the way this is going. I'm not going to put my savings at risk, not for something that's still just an idea. If Peter and Mark really believe in this, they need to make it work on their own. They need to prove it first. Then maybe, just maybe, I'll consider helping." Peter shifted in his seat, his smile gone now, replaced by a tight, forced expression. He wasn't used to being told no, not like this. He tried to cover it up with more pleasantries, but the tension in the room was thick. I could feel the shift, the way the energy had changed. They were no longer playing nice. They were desperate. "I understand. Mary," Peter said, his voice cold. "I just thought we could count on family. I guess I was wrong." Mark didn't say anything. He just looked at me, his eyes hard. I could see the gears turning in his head, but I wasn't worried. I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to let them push me into something I didn't want. Emma, too, seemed to retreat into herself. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the disappointment that I wouldn't help her husband. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't risk everything I had worked for just to make them feel better. They weren't ready, and they didn't deserve it. As the conversation wound down, Peter and Mark finally left, not without a few parting words. "We'll see how this goes. Mary," Peter said, his voice low, "but I won't forget this." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already made it clear, and as I closed the door behind them, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had stood my ground. I had protected what was mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly in control. But I knew this wasn't the end. They wouldn't give up that easily. Peter and Mark were the kind of men who didn't know when to quit. and I had to be ready for whatever came next. They'd regroup, they'd plan, and they'd come back with something else. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The next few weeks were tense. Peter and Mark didn't show up as often, but I could feel them watching from the sidelines, waiting for the right moment. But I wasn't worried. I was prepared. I had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to protect what's yours is to sit back, stay quiet, and let the other side make their move. And when they did, I'd be ready. As the days dragged on, I could feel a shift in the air, an unease I couldn't quite shake. Peter and Mark had stopped coming around as frequently, but the tension remained. It was like a storm cloud hanging over my head, threatening to burst at any moment. I knew they were waiting for the right time to strike again, and I wasn't about to be caught off guard. But what bothered me more than anything was the way Emma had been acting. She had always been my rock, the one person I could count on no matter what. But lately, she had become distant, almost withdrawn. She'd come over, but her visits felt more like obligations than genuine moments of connection. There was a heaviness in the air between us, a silence that neither of us seemed willing to address. One afternoon, after a particularly quiet dinner, I decided it was time to confront her. I had to know what was going on in her head, why she was letting Peter and Mark manipulate her like this. We sat at the kitchen table, the dim light from the overhead lamp casting long shadows across the room. I could feel the tension building, thickening the air between us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to speak. "Emma," I said softly, my voice steady but filled with the weight of everything I'd been holding back. "What's going on? I can feel the distance between us. You've been acting different. I need to know if Peter is putting pressure on you again. I can't help you if you don't let me in." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and uncertainty. For a moment, she didn't say anything, but I could see the struggle in her face, the way she was fighting to hold back the truth. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom," she began, her words trembling. "I know I haven't been the same lately. I've been trying to make things work with Peter, and I don't know what to do anymore. He's been so stressed, so worried about the farm project. He talks about it constantly, and I know he needs help. He keeps saying that we're so close to making it work, that this could change everything for us. I don't know how to fix things, and he keeps asking me to ask you for money. I don't want to do it, but he makes me feel like it's the only way." I could see the pain in her eyes, and my heart ached for her. I had raised her to be independent, to never let anyone manipulate her. But Peter had worked his way into her mind, slowly and carefully, planting seeds of doubt and making her believe that helping him was the right thing to do. And now, she was caught in the middle, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her love for me. "Emma," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "this isn't about helping Peter. This is about protecting yourself. You have to see what he's doing. He's using you, just like he's used me. He's manipulating you into thinking that his dream is your responsibility, but it's not. This is his mess, not yours. And it's certainly not mine." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at me, her lips trembling. "But Mom, I love him. I just want to help him. He's been under so much pressure, and I can't stand to see him like this. I thought maybe if I helped him out just a little, it would make things better." I reached across the table and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Sweetheart, I know you love him, but you have to understand something. Love doesn't mean sacrificing your future for someone else's dream. And love doesn't mean letting someone use you to get what they want. You're not responsible for Peter's success. He is. And if he really loved you, he wouldn't be pressuring you to do this. He would find another way. Emma looked down at the table, her fingers twisting together in her lap. I could see the weight of my words sinking in, but she wasn't ready to fully accept them yet. She still wanted to believe in Peter, to see the best in him. And I understood that. But I couldn't let her keep making the same mistakes. I couldn't let her keep falling for the lies. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had to say it. I had to make her see the truth, even if it broke her heart. Emma, I began, my voice quiet but unwavering. You have to stop. You have to stop letting Peter manipulate you. He's not the man you think he is. And if you keep allowing him to do this, you're going to lose yourself. You'll lose your independence, your self-respect. And I won't let that happen. She looked up at me then, her face pale, her eyes wide with realization. I don't know what to do. Mom, I don't want to lose him. But I don't know if I can keep doing this. I reached over and touched her cheek, my fingers brushing away a tear that had slipped down her face. You don't have to choose between me and him. Sweetheart, I'm not asking you to, but you have to see this for what it is. You're not his savior. You're his partner, and that means you deserve to be treated with respect, not used as a pawn in his game. She didn't say anything at first, but I could see the shift in her eyes. She was starting to understand. The fog was beginning to lift. I knew it wouldn't be easy for her to face the truth. It never was. But I also knew that she needed to hear it. She needed to see that she didn't have to sacrifice herself for someone else's dream. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur. Emma stopped by less frequently, and when she did, it was clear that the conversation we had shared had left a mark on her. She was still processing everything, still figuring out what it meant for her and for her relationship with Peter. But I could see the strength returning to her. I could see her starting to reclaim her own sense of self. Then, one evening, she came over and sat down with me, her face serious. Mom, she said, her voice steady, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I finally get it. I've been so focused on helping Peter that I forgot about myself. I've been letting him make me feel like his dreams are my responsibility, but they're not. They're his. I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and I reached out to pull her into a hug. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I whispered, you don't need to carry his weight anymore. You're strong, and you deserve someone who will respect you and stand by you, not someone who uses you to get what they want. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were necessary. Emma started pulling back from Peter, distancing herself from the emotional hold he had on her. It wasn't long before she told him that she couldn't continue living the way they had been. She couldn't keep sacrificing her happiness for his dream. And when she made that decision, something shifted in her. She began to stand taller, speak with more confidence, and regain the independence she had lost. As for Peter, he didn't take the news well. He tried to convince her to stay, tried to make her feel guilty for leaving him. But Emma didn't back down. She knew the truth now, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even her husband, pull her back into a life of lies. The silence in my house had grown deeper in the days that followed. It wasn't the comfortable kind of silence that accompanies peace, but a tense, heavy silence that sat between Emma and me like a brick wall. I could tell she was struggling with her decision, even though she had made it. She had distanced herself from Peter, but every time she looked at me, I saw that familiar ache in her eyes. The weight of the choices she had made was starting to settle in, and though she was regaining her independence, she was also feeling the deep loss of the relationship she had tried so hard to protect. One evening, after a particularly long day, Emma came over. I could see she had been crying, and my heart sank. She had told me she was done with Peter, but it didn't seem like that was the end of the story. She sat down on the couch next to me, her shoulders hunched, her eyes red and swollen. I could feel the rawness in her presence, the unspoken words hanging in the air. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice trembling as she looked at me. "I don't know what to do anymore. I thought I was making the right decision, but now, I don't know. I love him. I always have, but I can't keep going down this road. I feel like I'm losing everything, my marriage, myself, and I don't know who I am anymore." I could feel her pain, the depth of her confusion and heartache. I had never wanted this for her. I had always dreamed of her finding happiness, a love that was genuine and free of manipulation. And yet, here she was, tangled in a web she couldn't seem to escape. I reached for her hand, my fingers closing around hers, grounding her, grounding both of us. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "I know you're hurting. I know you feel lost, but you have to understand, what you've been going through isn't love. Love isn't about losing yourself for someone else. It's not about sacrificing your happiness for another person's dreams. That's what Peter wanted you to do. He wanted you to become his enabler, his shield, his way out. But that's not love. That's manipulation." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, her voice a soft whisper. "I thought he needed me. I thought that by helping him, I could make things right." "You thought you could fix him," I said, squeezing her hand gently. "But no one can fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed, and no one should have to carry someone else's burdens like that. You were never meant to lose yourself in order to love someone else, and you don't have to keep doing that." Emma leaned into me, her body trembling as she let out a long, shaky breath. "I'm so scared. Mom, what if I've already ruined everything? What if I've already lost him for good?" I shook my head, brushing her hair away from her face. "You haven't lost him, sweetheart. You've lost a version of him that was never real. The man you thought he was doesn't exist. The man you've been holding on to, the one who manipulated you, he isn't the person you're supposed to love. I know you're afraid, but you can't let fear control you. Fear has already controlled you for too long. It's time to let go. It's time to reclaim your life. And if Peter truly loved you, he would understand that." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something shift in her. There was clarity in her gaze, something stronger than the doubt that had clouded her vision for so long. She nodded slowly, like she was finally starting to believe me. "I don't know if I'm ready to let go, but I know you're right. I've been holding on to a dream that wasn't mine. I've been living in a lie." The weight in the room lightened, just a little, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was starting to get my daughter back. She wasn't all the way there yet, but she was on her way. The journey ahead would be difficult. I knew that, but she was strong, stronger than she had given herself credit for, and she wasn't alone. She still had me. Over the next few weeks, Emma and I began to rebuild the bond that had been frayed by the tension between us and by Peter's influence. I never pushed her, never told her what to do. I knew that it wasn't my place to make her choices for her, but I could be there for her as she navigated the pain. The more time we spent together, the more I saw her regain her confidence. She started speaking up for herself, setting boundaries with Peter and with anyone who tried to control her. It wasn't easy, but she was doing it. She was starting to heal. Then came the day when I knew things were truly changing. Emma walked into my house, her face bright with determination. "I did it, Mom," she said, her voice strong. "I called Peter. I told him I couldn't keep doing this. I told him I needed space, that I needed to figure things out for myself. And he didn't take it well, but I didn't back down." I smiled at her, proud beyond words. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. You're doing what's best for you, and that's all that matters." Her face softened, and she let out a long breath. I feel like a weight has been lifted. It wasn't easy, but I think it was the right choice. I don't know where this will go, but I know I need to focus on myself. I need to find who I am again. "You've already found her," I said, taking her hand. "She was always there, right beneath the surface. You just needed to remember who you were before everything else started happening. You're not defined by your relationship with Peter or anyone else. You're defined by who you are, by your heart, your strength, your spirit." As Emma and I sat together, talking about everything and nothing, I realized something. The greatest gift I had given her wasn't just the lessons I had taught her over the years. It was the knowledge that she could stand on her own, that she was enough, that she deserved to be loved for who she truly was, not for the version of herself that others tried to shape. And as for Peter, well, I knew that he wasn't going to go away quietly. He wouldn't just accept Emma's decision and move on. But I also knew that I had to trust her. She was capable of making her own decisions, and I wasn't going to step in and fix everything for her. She had to learn how to take control of her own life, and I had to trust that, no matter what happened, she would be okay. The next few weeks were a blur. Peter and Mark kept trying to reach out to Emma, but she held firm. She didn't let them manipulate her anymore. She didn't let them push her around. And slowly but surely, she began to reclaim her life. There would be more challenges ahead. Of course, there always were. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like Emma was free from the hold that Peter had on her, free from the fear and doubt that had clouded her judgment, and most of all, free to find her own path, her own happiness. And that, to me, was the most important thing, because no matter what happened, no matter where life took her, I knew that Emma had finally learned to stand on her own 2 feet, and that was all I could ever want for her. The days following Emma's decision to separate from Peter were not easy for either of us. The weight of everything that had happened hung over us like a storm cloud. But with each passing day, I saw Emma slowly regaining pieces of herself. It wasn't just about her finding peace within her marriage anymore. It was about her rediscovering who she was before Peter had come into her life. She wasn't the same person anymore, and neither was I. The emotional toll had changed us both, but it was a shift I was hopeful we could navigate together. At first, she kept to herself a lot. She spent time reading, journaling, going on walks, and slowly reestablishing the routines she had abandoned when Peter had become her focus. I couldn't help but feel relief seeing her take back control of her life. but the silence that filled the house wasn't always comfortable. I could tell Emma was still carrying the burden of the past, of what had happened between her and Peter. The guilt, the shame, those were powerful emotions that only time could heal. One night, as we sat together in the living room, I could sense that Emma had something weighing heavily on her mind. She was fiddling with her coffee cup, her eyes downcast, lost in thought. I had been waiting for this moment, knowing that she would eventually have to confront the hardest part of this entire ordeal, her own heart. "Mom," she said softly, her voice breaking the stillness of the room, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about Peter, about how I let him manipulate me. I feel stupid. How could I not see it? How could I have let him use me like that? I should have known better." I watched her closely, my heart aching as she spoke. The guilt in her voice was unmistakable, but I didn't want her to carry that burden alone. "Sweetheart," I said gently, moving to sit beside her, "you're not stupid. You're human. And love can make us blind. It can make us believe things we shouldn't, do things we never thought we'd do. But what matters now is that you've seen the truth. You're seeing it for what it is. And that's the first step toward healing." Emma looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I should have known. I should have trusted you more. Mom, I should have listened to you when you warned me. I don't know why I let him twist things, let him make me feel like I was responsible for everything." I reached over, pulling her into a hug, holding her tight. "You're not responsible for him, Emma, and you're certainly not responsible for fixing him. You never were. You've been carrying a weight that wasn't yours to carry, and it's time to let it go. It's not your fault that he manipulated you. What matters now is how you move forward. You don't have to carry his burdens anymore." She clung to me for a moment, tears streaming down her face, but after a few minutes, she pulled away, wiping her eyes and letting out a shaky breath. "I just feel like I've lost everything, my marriage, my sense of who I am. It's all gone. I don't even know where to start." I looked at her, my heart full of both sadness and pride. I could see how deeply she was hurting, how lost she felt. But I also saw the strength beginning to shine through, the strength I had always known was there. "You haven't lost everything. Emma, you may have lost a relationship, but you haven't lost yourself. You're still here, and you're still strong. You can start fresh. It's going to take time, but you'll find your way." Over the next few weeks, Emma started to open up more, to confront the emotions she had buried deep inside for so long. She began to talk more openly about her feelings, about her fears, her anger, and even the sadness she still felt about her marriage to Peter. We spent a lot of time together walking through the park, sitting on the porch, drinking tea, and just talking. And with each conversation, I could see her letting go of the past, piece by piece. It was a slow process, but I could see the progress. One afternoon, Emma called me into the kitchen where she had been cooking. I hadn't seen her this animated in weeks, and the sight made my heart lift. She had spent the morning baking a batch of cookies, a recipe she used to make with her grandmother when she was little. I thought it might be nice to make something from the past, something that feels like me, she explained, her voice light. "I think I've forgotten what it feels like to do something just for me, something that makes me happy." I smiled as I watched her set the cookies on the counter. "That's the spirit, sweetheart. You're starting to remember who you are, and that's what matters." As the days went on, Emma began to do more things for herself. She took up painting again, something she had loved when she was younger, but had abandoned when her life became consumed by Peter. She enrolled in a yoga class and started going to the local community center for group activities. I could see the spark in her return, the light that had been dimmed for so long. And it wasn't just about her activities, it was about her mindset. She was reclaiming her independence, and she was no longer apologizing for it. But the most powerful moment came when she decided to call Peter. I could feel the tension in the air as she sat in the living room, phone in hand, her heart pounding in her chest. I sat nearby, offering her silent support. She had to do this on her own, but I was there for her, every step of the way. When she hung up the phone, I could see the relief in her face. I told him, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I told him that I couldn't keep doing this. I told him that I needed space. I need to figure out who I am before I can even think about us anymore. And I told him I wasn't coming back to that life. It's over. I nodded, proud of her. That was the hardest thing you've done, wasn't it? She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Yeah, but I think it was the right thing. I can't keep living like this, pretending I'm someone I'm not. I have to find my own way. In that moment, I knew she had truly let go. She had let go of the fear, the guilt, and the confusion that had held her back for so long. Emma was finally free to find herself again, to rebuild her life on her own terms. And while the road ahead would be challenging, I knew she was strong enough to face it. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. Emma was no longer the woman she had been before, lost and manipulated. She was someone new, someone who had found the courage to stand up for herself and make the hard decisions. And I couldn't have been more proud. After everything that had happened, Emma found herself at a crossroads. She had confronted Peter and made the difficult decision to walk away. But the emotional toll of the past few months had left her feeling uncertain. It wasn't just about leaving him, it was about rediscovering herself. She had spent so much time focusing on Peter's needs, on their life together, that she had forgotten who she was. But in the quiet moments that followed, she began to find herself again. The tears, the heartbreak, the confusion, those were all part of the healing process. In time, Emma found the courage to step forward, embracing the unknown with the strength she had always had inside her. She realized that letting go wasn't about giving up. It was about making room for something better. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she knew one thing for sure: she had reclaimed her own life. In life, we often get caught up in trying to fix other people's problems, trying to please others at the expense of our own well-being. But sometimes, the most important thing we can do is take a step back, let go of what no longer serves us, and reclaim our own power. Letting go doesn't mean we've failed. It means we're strong enough to recognize when something is no longer right for us, and brave enough to make the hard choices. It's not always easy, but it is always worth it. If this story resonated with you, remember that you are never alone in facing challenges or making difficult decisions. Sometimes the hardest step is the first one, but it leads to growth, healing, and a brighter future. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more empowering stories that help you reclaim your strength and find your true path.